What's up, guys? Today I wanted to talk about 5 smartphones that I don't get to talk about a lot on this channel, and they have some pretty, decent price drops, so I wanted to make sure that you guys know about these deals. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first one is the Google Pixel 6 Pro here. So this is a pretty good deal. So this phone was originally $900, but they're going for around $700 brand new on Amazon. It says for a limited time right now, so if you're thinking about buying it, I don't know how long this is gonna last. It's been up for a few days. But yeah, I thought this was a pretty good deal. This is still one of my favorite smartphone cameras, my personal favorite out of all the flagships that I have tested. So this phone has a pretty good design. It's still a very unique design. It's an aluminum frame. It's got a glass back. It's also IP68 dust and water resistant. And like I said, it's got that pretty cool camera bar design that really makes it stand out. Now it does have a LTPO AMOLED display at 120 Hz. It is HDR10 plus. It is a curved panel at 6.7 inches. Now it is a 1440p display at 512 for the PPI. Overall, it's a really nice display. One of the best displays that we've seen on a Pixel phone. It's got the punch hole in the middle, and I really like it. It's very vibrant colors. It's very silky smooth with the 120 Hz. So like I said, one of my favorite displays, and it is Gorilla Glass Victus as well too, so it's pretty strong in terms of quality. Now the best thing about these Pixel phones is the stock version of Android 12, so you just get the standard Google apps, no bloatware, anything like that. And also when the next version of Android comes out, typically you're going to get them first on these Pixel phones. Also, you do have the Google Tensor chip on here, which has been pretty fast, considering that this phone has been getting updates and stuff to help with all the, sort of bugs and stuff. But I will make an updated video about this phone, but to me, it's pretty much runs how it's supposed to these days. So this phone does not have any SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM, so it can easily multitask, a ton of applications and stuff like that. Gaming performance on here is also really great too. The stereo speakers are also pretty top notch as well. Great bass quality, good mids and highs. Of course, this phone does not have a headphone jack. NFC is on board as well as the fingerprint scanner. Now the fingerprint scanner is better since the updates. Now it's still not the fastest fingerprint scanner in the world, but it does get the job done. Now I do wish that they added face unlock. Unfortunately, it's not here. Hopefully they will. But the main thing with these Pixel phones, of course, is the camera. So still one of my favorite cameras, still gives me some of my favorite colors for skin tones, and I just love the cameras in general. So it's a 50 megapixel standard, a 48 megapixel telephoto lens, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It also shoots in 4K 60, and then you have a 11.1 ultra wide selfie cam on here as well too. It is 4K 30. And like I said, the images are why you buy this phone, for the image processing. I like the image processing that the Pixel does. I like the color science that they do on here. I just think it is really, really solid on here. Unfortunately, even though this is my favorite phone for, stills, it's not my favorite for video. I think the video actually lacks compared to S22 Ultra or an iPhone. The video is just kind of okay on this phone. So you do have on here fairly good battery life, a 5003 milliamp battery with 30-watt charging on here. You also have wireless charging at 23 watts and reverse wireless charging. Basically, this phone can easily do all day, or it can easily do 6 hours of screen on time. So highly recommend the Pixel 6 Pro. Next is the Asus ZENFONE 8. So this is a pretty awesome sort of compact flagship phone. Here I believe the ZENFONE 9 is around the corner, so this might come down in price even more, but it's currently around like $585. Like I said, the new one's coming, so this one should go down, so I would just watch it. And I really like this phone when it came out. So it has a glass back, an aluminum frame on here. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. It's sort of like the successor to the Galaxy S10e. It's just a little bigger. It's got a 5.9 inch display. It's Super AMOLED, 120 Hz, HDR10 plus on here. 1080p panel, 446 for the PPI. I thought the panel was really nice on here. It's a completely flat panel as well too. Another Gorilla Glass Victus as well. It's got the punch hole on here, and I really like the display. Very nice display on here. It actually gets very bright at 1100 nits peak brightness. So this phone, it is upgradable to Android 12 with the Zen UI. This phone has the Snapdragon 888 processor with the Adreno 660. So basically, it can basically play any game that you throw at it at high settings. It can you know, just multitask like a beast. Basically, it's just a super fast phone. Unfortunately, there's no SD card support. 128 gigs of internal storage, 6 or 8 gigs of RAM, and then we also have on here some pretty amazing sounding stereo speakers, in my opinion. I was really blown away with bass quality, mids and highs. Now, what's awesome about this phone is that they actually keep the headphone jack. So it's one of those rare flagships that actually have a headphone jack. And you also have NFC on here. Under the display, fingerprint sensor, very fast. You also have on here a fairly good camera setup. It's only a dual camera setup. It's 64 megapixel standard and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide. They can actually shoot in 8K 24 with a 12 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 30. So image quality, like I said, is top notch on this phone. So basically, you're buying this phone for somebody that wants, you know, more compact, you know, flagship phone. Now, the only thing about this phone is that it has a 4,000 milliamp battery with 30-watt charging. So it charges fairly fast, but battery life on here is sort of like the S10e. It still has that problem with battery life. So it's got, you can get like maybe 4 hours, 30 minutes of screen on time, depending on how you use it, maybe 5, but it's definitely not an all-day phone from my experience. So it's one of those phones you kind of have to charge, but if you can get over that and sacrifice that for the size of this phone, I think it's just an extremely comfortable phone to hold. All right, so next is the standard Note 10 or the smaller Note 10. We talk about the Plus version a lot. This one is actually much cheaper. Now I have all the links down below. It's got an aluminum frame on here as well, basically the same design. It's IP68 dust and water resistant as well, so it has the built-in stylus. It's basically, just think of it as a smaller Note. So it does have the dynamic AMOLED display, HDR10 plus at 6.3 inches. So like I said, it's easier to one hand. It's also 1080p 401 for the PPI, and it's still a very good looking display, you know, in my opinion. So this phone, it did get the Android 12 treatment as well too. Snapdragon 855 on here, Adreno 640 on here. Basically the same performance as the Note 10 Plus. So you'll be able to play games, you know, just use your phone, and it won't be lagging or anything like that. High gaming settings as well too. Like I said, essentially the same thing. No SD card support is basically the big thing here. So the Plus version has SD card. This one does not. But the good thing about this phone is that you get 256 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. So basically, if you don't download a lot of content, then you should be fine with 256 gigs on here. So the stereo speakers are very loud, very crisp and clear. NFC is on board. Basically all your flagship features are still here. The fingerprint scanner under the display, Samsung desktop support, wireless desktop support is on here as well. The cameras are essentially the same. It's a triple camera setup instead though. We do have a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto, and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide. It's using 4K 60 on the front and back with a 10 megapixel selfie, and again basically the same photos you know, as the Plus version. Very good photos, very good image processing, good coloring on here. It does a really great job for an older flagship. Now the battery life, so it's pretty interesting. So it's got a 3,500 milliamp battery with 25-watt charging. You also have wireless charging on board with the reverse wireless charging. Now this phone, for a smaller phone, I got pretty decent battery life. Now not as good as the Plus version, but I felt like I was getting a little bit over 5 hours of screen on time. So I wouldn't call it an all-day phone, but I definitely wouldn't say the battery life is bad by any means. So definitely consider this phone, guys. Alright, so next is the OnePlus 9. Now this phone has come down tremendously in price since, you know, I first got it. Easily you can find renewed refurbished like under 400 bucks now, so I think it's a pretty good deal. This is a very impressive phone to me, especially at that price point. So you do have on here a glass back and a plastic frame, surprisingly. Now you do have a water resistant rating on it, but it's for the T-Mobile version, like officially, but I believe you can get these wet no problem. So this phone does have a 6.5 inch fluid AMOLED display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1100 nits peak brightness, a very bright display, and it's a fully flat display as well too. It's got the punch hole, Android 12, Oxygen OS 12, and it's got the Snapdragon 888 on here. And this is a silky smooth phone. That was one of my first things that you know, my impressions of the phone was how fast, how smooth it was with Oxygen 08, especially with its 888 processor. In addition to that, gaming on here, multitasking is going to be top notch, of course, since it's got, you know, a flagship chipset in it. So this phone does not have any SD card support, unfortunately. You do have a 128 and 8 GB version for the base model. Now this phone does have some pretty impressive stereo speakers as well too. They were pretty loud, good bass quality. NFC is on here. The fingerprint scanner under the display was pretty nice, very fast. Now one of the main things that they tried to sell us on with this phone was actually the cameras. I actually thought the cameras were pretty good, and especially since the price has come down, I thought they are, very good for this price point. Especially, I still think this phone has one of the best ultra wides that I've personally tested. So you got a 48 megapixel standard, a 50 megapixel ultra wide, a 2 megapixel monochrome camera, and then this collaboration was with Hasselblad, so they are doing like the color calibration and stuff like that. So you do have 8K video on here, 16 megapixel selfie cam with 1080p video for the front. Like I said, I thought the image quality was very good. The ultra wides were super detailed shots, because you usually don't expect that to see that from an ultra wide camera, having 50 megapixels. I enjoyed the cameras on here. I thought image processing was pretty good on here. So I definitely think at this price point you'll be extremely happy with the camera quality on here. So this phone does have a 4,500 milliamp battery, and what's awesome about this phone is that it came with a 65-watt charger, but they actually put the charger in the box, which I was extremely impressed with. So you get pretty fast charging, and you don't have to pay for an extra charger. It also has wireless charging on board as well too. So basically, this is also a phone that can easily do 6 hours of screen on time as well. So I was really impressed with the OnePlus 9. I think that this is a great deal for well under $400 now. Alright guys, lastly is the iPhone 12 mini. I personally love this phone at this price point. This phone you can easily find for around $400, if not a little bit cheaper on eBay. Anybody that loves small phones, you'll really like this phone. Like I said, very cheap and very powerful at this point. So it's got still, I think, a really nice design, aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. Basically looks like the the 13 mini. Now you do have on here a 5.4-inch Super Retina OLED display on here. It's a 1080p panel, 476 for the PPI. Like I said, for people who like smaller phones, this phone is extremely compact. You can one-hand it very easily, extremely comfortable. So if you hate big phones, I would definitely give this a look. So this phone has the Apple A14 chip, extremely fast. Just check out the benchmarks. Gaming performance is top notch on this phone. It's just blazing fast, so you don't really have to worry about performance. You honestly can get this and not upgrade for 5-6 years. So this phone does have on here pretty impressive stereo speakers, very loud, good bass quality as well too. NFC is on board, Face ID is on here as well. This phone has top-notch, still flagship level cameras. 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 4K, 24, 30, 60 video, and then a 12 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K, 24 through 60, and very impressive image quality. Like I said, basically still flagship level cameras on here. Now the only downside with the 12 mini is that you do have not so great battery life. The battery life is just kind of like, it's kind of okay. So it's a 2,227 milliamp battery, 20-watt charging. You have the MagSafe wireless charging with the standard wireless charging. So basically, this is another phone that, since it's small, you can kind of get like 4 hours or 30 minutes. So this is one of those phones that you kind of have to charge as well too. Now, you can, depending on how you use it, I've seen, battery drain tests where this phone got up to like 5 hours and something like that. But I think typically, for your average person, you're looking at 4 hours and 30 to 5 hours of screen on time, which is decent again for this size. So be sure to let me know, what do you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.